Hello chess friends and welcome to that of chess channel and welcome back to the computer Blitz chess championship in 2022. So we're now in the super finals, and in the brutal super final we have a match game between Stockfish and the Dragon Engine, and this is now for the 5th or 6th time in a row when we have this super events in chess engine world that the Dragon Engine is reaching the finals, that the Lila C0 is not getting into the finals. And in this computer Blitz chess championship we had also a beautiful situation in which the second best engine, which was the Dragon Engine, and the Lila C0, which was the third best engine out of the group stage, had the opportunity to battle again in sort of a direct duel for the second place for the finals against Stockfish, in which the Dragon Engine really destroyed Lila C0 with a clear result. So it's more and more obvious that the Dragon Engine is becoming now the second force in the chess world. So as I said, congratulations to the developers of the Dragon Engine. I think they're doing also a great job, which is good for us. Of course, if they're putting the level higher, then of course the Stockfish engine is also becoming stronger and stronger. So as I said, it will be, I think, a beautiful era now for us in the chess world. So let's check out now one great game from the super final. It's Stockfish against the Dragon. The result is so far clear. Still the Stockfish engine is the best engine in the world. The result is about plus 30 already. For Stockfish it's something about 85 to 55 for the Stockfish engine. So as I said, it's a clear result again for the fish, and probably Stockfish will again win a beautiful chess event. So let's check out now one great game. It was a beautiful directed attack again by Stockfish. You know, when Stockfish has an attacking formation, then we can expect really some wild things. So here d4 was played. We have g6, we have e4. So far we have the modern defense. After move bishop to g7, we have now the move f4, which is now the 3 pawns attack. This game could also transpose maybe into the Persian defense, into the so-called Austrian attack. But here after move c5, we have now sort of a, I would call it sort of a Benoni structure, because after move d5 and d6 we have reached, I think, a similar line like in the Benoni defense. We can play still knight to c3, bishop to b5, knight to f3 are common moves here, and I really liked here now this choice that they had to play. First we have this move a4, which is now not allowing here black, for instance, to push further with a6 b5. Many times in the Benoni or in similar structures, white is playing simply on the space advantage on the queen side, and it's never allowing some space advantages on the queen side for black. So here after move knight to f6, we have now bishop to b5, and here comes already the tricky part of this opening. So we have now really annoying move bishop to b5, and you can cover of course with the knight on from b to d7, with the knight from f to d7. You can cover also with the move bishop to d7, or you can play maybe the move king to f8. The move king to f8 of course doesn't make sense, and there is only, believe me or not, one good move. You have to play knight from f to d7. If you play something else, if you play knight from b to d7, then you're basically already tactically lost. For instance, you get this one, e5 is really a beautiful idea, because the problem is now where to go with your knight. If you play knight to g4, you lose the knight. If you play knight to h5, you get simply e6. e6 is simply winning the game immediately. The same thing happens if you play for instance knight to g8. So here e6 again, and black is losing the game immediately, which is really wild. If you play here bishop to d7, if you cover yourself with the bishop, still this e5 idea is working, and now black has really an unpleasant game, because you can now make already one mistake. And I played several times this trap. It's really working very often. For instance, if your opponent plays knight to g4, then you can play queen to g4, and you see you cannot take with the bishop because of the spin by the bishop against the king. So you could maybe prolong the game a little bit with the move queen to a5, and now what white could do as a mistake is maybe the move bishop to d2. After bishop to d2, queen to b5, that solves the position, because here you can play a takes b5, but now the bishop can take out also the queen on g4. So you have to react here in a different way. You cannot really protect yourself with the bishop. You have to play knight to d2, and now for instance if queen to b5 happens, then e6 is immediately winning the game, because we can notice the queen is hanging, but also here the bishop on d7 is hanging. So you see, you take, you lose simply here. After d takes e6, we can also play, of course, a takes b5. Nothing dramatically changed, so there's simply two pieces hanging, and it's game over for black. So that's why you see after bishop to b5 already some tricky stuff here. Knight to d7, the only move that I think black can play in this continuation. So we have now normal development, knight to f3, castling. We have castling also by Stockfish, and now knight to a6. This is a provocative line, sort of. What black is hoping for is to get knight to c7, then a6 b5, getting the space advantage on the queen side, the normal Benoni expansion, sort of, because the main strength of the Benoni is this long diagonal, the dark square diagonal. But I really don't like already this setup, because the space advantage that white is here is, I think, giving white really good game. So okay, with the move knight to a6, as I said, it's a little bit of a provocative move, because what you don't want to play is bishop to a6, because after b takes a6, rook to b8 is going to happen, and now maybe with some ideas a5, then maybe bishop to a6, black could have really two dominant bishops all over the board. So this bishop will really aim all over the board with the support of the rook on b8, with some ideas maybe to play c4, knight to c5. Black can have really a beautiful game. So that's why white should not take out this knight, although it's a little bit tempting to mess up a little bit the pawn structure on the queen side, but as I said, don't do that. So here in the continuation, after move knight to a6, we have now an aggressive move already by Stockfish, which is now the move f5. And what you don't want to play now is g takes f5, then e takes f5. You have weakened a little bit the pawn structure here in front of the king, and now with queen to e1, queen to g3, queen to h4, bishop to h6 could happen, knight to g5, bishop to d3, and similar stuff. So white will find, I think, here a beautiful attacking setup. So that's why here first dragon played knight to f6, attacks also the pawn on e4, and is maybe threatening now this move g takes f5, because now at least with the move knight to f6, black gained a new defender in front of the king. When the knight wasn't there, you have only the bishop as a defender. So now maybe with the move knight to f6, this g takes f5 idea is a little bit possible. So that's why knight to c3 here played by the fish. We have g takes f5 now. Tricky ideas here for both sides. And now comes knight to g5. If you play, for instance, e takes f5, I'm not sure if this is working for white, because here after bishop to f5, then knight to h4, you can maybe chase away the bishop. But now with bishop to g6, I think that black can defend its position. We have now really cemented position. Now after something like knight to f5, the knight will come into the game here and will attack simply the d5 weakness. I think this is playable for black. At least it seems to me that black has regrouped. So that's why here after move g takes f5, Stockfish played a different line, played knight to g5, which is in my opinion much better, because first of all this pawn is protected. Now we have also liberated our queen. The queen can come into the game and maybe can also attack here the king, maybe on the g file, on the h file, maybe queen to f3, queen to g3, and similar stuff. So at least the queen will come into the game in the near future. So f takes e4, we have a knight from c to e4, knight takes e4, knight to e4, and now f5 by the dragon engine. The dragon engine doesn't want to tolerate this centralized knight, so that's why Stockfish played knight to g5 immediately. It is now targeting the weak e6 square. That's now the whole battle around the square e6. It's many times in the Benoni structure and similar structures a weakness. First of all, we can notice the e6 as a weak square, and also the e7 as a backward pawn as really a weakness. We also, I would consider this move, this pawn on f5 also as a weakness, because it is maybe well protected, but sometimes when you have this pawn on f5, it's basically standing in your way. Let's flip the board a little bit. You can be the judge of this. You see, I think you would love to play somehow f4 and then get with the bishop somehow here. So it's, I think, sort of a positional weakness. Maybe it's not a weakness that we can take out from white's perspective, this pawn on f5, but it's standing, as I said, simply a little bit in the way. So that's why here, let's flip the board again. Here after move knight to g5, what the dragon engine did is first the dragon engine protected this weak e6 square. So in the continuation we have rook to a3, and you know when Stockfish is playing a rook lift, that's really wild and sick stuff will happen for sure. So now you see when we have evaluated our strength of the pieces of white pieces, really all of the pieces are I think were on good squares. The queen is a long range piece, so the queen can come very active in the game in one particular move. You don't have to play 2-3 tempi with the queen is already there. The rook is on an active file, still rook to f3, rook to h3, so the rook is perfectly fine. The bishop is very active. This bishop, again a long range piece, will come into the game if necessary in one move. So the only piece that needed to be included into the attack was the move was the rook on a1, and now with the move rook to a3, you know, when Stockfish, as I said, is playing a rook lift, I know that the game will be special for sure. So here after move h6 we have knight to h3. You don't want to play of course knight to f3 because from this square you don't have clear targets. I think maybe you could try knight to h4 ideas attacking the f5, but as I said, this is I think much better what Stockfish did. Knight to h3 with knight to f4, and from this square you're controlling these two squares, the e6 square and also the g6 square. So that's why here knight takes b5, a takes b5. So the dragon engine wanted to get rid of at least one of these attacking pieces. The bishop on b5 was very active, so now the dragon engine gave up the bishop for the knight for a bishop. So we have king to h7, we have now rook to e1 attacking the e7 pawn, and now f4. And this was maybe, at least my Stockfish engine at home suggested this move as a mistake by the dragon engine. Maybe slightly better would have been the move queen to e8. But as we said, the positional problem about this pawn on f5 is I think a huge one, because you would love of course to have your pawn on f4 somehow protected and liberate your light with bishop, but it's not possible. Stockfish is controlling the f4 square very well. So after move queen to e8, maybe knight to f4 would be sort of an idea. Bishop to e5 is okay, playable, but now with king to h1 we can get out of this mess and maybe you can develop. But now with rook to h3 again, I think white is really having a good position. Even if you try maybe something like bishop to d4 in this position without playing queen to e8, it's again not good, because bishop to e3 is actually working. And the problem is, I think, again, this lack of the defenders. You cannot just rush with the bishop into the attack. You can maybe even try to take out the pawn on b2, but now with queen to h5 the game is already wild, because even if you protect yourself, bishop to h6 is going to happen for sure. Bishop to h6, knight to g5, look at this attacking flow with rook to g3. It's something I think that you have to resign immediately. Knight to e6 going to happen, so too many tactical shots. So as I said, after rook to e1, queen to e8 not really working, bishop to e5, bishop to d4 not really working, because you're leaving your h6 unprotected. So as I said, at least with queen to e8 you're preventing maybe this outpost of the queen on h5. But as I said, here the dragon engine tried at least to get the bishop into the game, which is for a human eye I think a normal idea. But as I said, my Stockfish engine at home evaluates this move as the main weakness. Now after knight to f4 we have bishop to e5, but now with queen to e2 here Stockfish found a beautiful counterattack, because bishop to f4 is actually not working. You get this one, queen to e4, and you can cover with the bishop. But now with queen to f4 you see we have a beautiful dark square battery. The h6 is weak, so again strategically and tactically lost game here for black. So after move queen to e2, rook to f6 was played by dragon, and now b6 getting use of this a file attack. So that's why a5, and now knight to h5 simply attacking the rook. We have rook to f7, and now rook to f3. This seems a little bit strange, because you don't want to play, of course, trade off this active rook which can come into the game. But actually when we think about it harder, this is good, because the rook is actually the only defender in front of black's king. So that's why after move rook to f3, queen to f3, now black is again lacking in of defenders. The only good defensive piece can actually become only the queen. The bishop is a little bit far away from the action, and this rook hasn't played in the game anyway, so it's almost like the dragon engine is playing without the whole rook this whole game. So that's why here queen to g8 trying to protect check the position, we have rook to f1, and now bishop to d7. Here the Dragon Engine is desperately trying somehow to include the rook into the game. So we have now queen to d3 attacking the king, we have king to h8, and now knight to f4. Again, if you try here bishop to f4, again you're losing, I think, this very important bishop which is controlling the h6, rook to f4, then rook to h4. You see the h6 is weak, and again, in my opinion, this is a tactical lost game here for black. So knight to f4, we have bishop to d4, bishop to e3. Here, if you take bishop to e3, queen to e3, again you see knight to g6 is actually the main goal. This pawn is weak, so again maybe rook to f3, rook to g3 can happen. So again, the setup of white is simply a beautiful attacking formation here for white. So after move bishop to e3, here bishop to f6 was played, knight to g6, the check, we have king to g7, and now again this idea rook to f3 with the idea, of course, to play rook to g3. So that's why h5, we have knight to f4 attacking this pawn, we have queen to h7, and now a beautiful move rook to g3. As we said, here bishop to g4, the Dragon Engine is trying to cover this position, but now a beautiful stunner knight to h5. If you take, of course, with the bishop it's not possible, so you have to trade off the queens, or you take out with the queen here the knight on h5. Any choice that you play, I think it's losing here, because even you're checked, sorry. After move knight to h5, here queen to h5 is the only move, but now with move h3 the bishop is simply trapped. We're reaching now an endgame stage, and it's simply game over here for black. So here after move king to f7, we have rook to g4. It seems so that maybe black can hang on to this position, but actually when we think about it harder, these are two connected pass pawns on the g file, on the h file, so it's, I think, losing for sure, because okay, maybe you can take out this one, but the problem is again that this bishop on f6 is only used in order to defend the king. So here rook to g8, we have rook takes g8, king to g8, now b3, not allowing to take out the pawn, and now after king to g7, bishop to f2, we have queen to e8, and now queen to c4, queen to h5, queen to e4, we have bishop to e5, and now bishop to e1. And this is now a beautiful sort of defensive setup by Stockfish. The Stockfish engine is protecting the bishop, and the bishop is actually protecting the very important first rank. You see now why is that so important, because okay, here you have the opportunity to play queen to d1, but now with king to f1, Stockfish has solved now all of the positional problems. And again, if the Dragon Engine trades now everything, if the Dragon Engine forces maybe a trade of bishops, forces maybe a trade of queens, still it's a winning endgame then, of course, for white, because of these two connected pass pawns on the king side. So that's why it's a pleasant game now for Stockfish. Bishop to f6, Stockfish simply pushed the pawn further, is even forcing a trade of queens, is saying if you want to trade off the queens, I know that it's winning, especially also because of this one. Also the a5 pawn is weak because it's on a dark square and you cannot push it further, so it's attackable, of course, by the bishop on e1. So here after move queen to a1 was played, king to f2. Here we have a b takes a4, queen to a4. Now Stockfish is simply marching with the king, and it's of course trying to get the pawns further. So we have queen to a1, queen to e4. Now a couple of checks, but not the problem. Here Stockfish proceeds simply with the progress with the pawns, g5. Now bishop to g3. Simply again forcing a trade of queens. It's not going to happen, because the Dragon Engine is trying, of course, to play complicated chess. It's trying to at least maybe to do some perpetuals and get a draw. But h5 simply, queen to b6, Stockfish simply push the pawn further. We have c4, bishop to e5. Now Stockfish pushed again a new pawn further, and now bishop to e1. Again, this same setup that we have seen before. We have queen to a1, and now Stockfish is marching with the king, because no good checks are possible. Here bishop to h4. Everything is pretty much connected, so no really no perpetuals are possible here for the Dragon Engine. We have bishop to g7. Now king to g6 is going to happen. Really beautiful king march, and now after move king to e6, you see no checks are possible. Beautiful calculations here by the Stockfish engine. B5, we have c takes b5, king to c7, now g6, very important move. Now we have the support, and what we want to, of course, now is simply to take out this weak pawn on e7. So here queen to f6, we have b6 kicking away the king, king to b6, and now after bishop to e7, no checks are again possible. That's not the most important thing. Okay, you can play maybe one check, but king to f7 is going to happen, so again nothing special. So that's why queen to e8, we have king to f5, we have queen to b5. Now Stockfish takes another pawn, again some checks, but again no perpetuals are possible. Stockfish hides the king here on f7, king to a5. Now we have g7, bishop to g7, again c4, and Stockfish promotes now a new queen. Really beautiful setup here. A couple of checks again, but now Stockfish covers with the bishop, queen to e7, and now the game is of course over here after queen to b5. It was a beautiful checkmate. So really beautiful game. First of all, I think you should be familiar with this very aggressive setups in this Benoni structures. You see a4, and now with bishop to b5, black is already in many positional problems, and I really like this f5 idea, paralyzing a little bit the light square bishop. Beautiful again attacking game by Stockfish. I really enjoyed it a lot. So as I said, Stockfish has now a comfortable +30 lead in front of the Dragon engine, so it will be probably, as I said, a new winning era for the Stockfish engine. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more brutal attacks like this, check out my commented chess games played by computer series with some more games played by the Dragon engine, Stockfish, Alpha 0, Lila 0, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.